Good afternoon from São Paulo, Brazil. My name is Richard Miscos. I'm currently the president of the working group Digital Sociology of the International Sociological Association. And I will host this fourth and last session of our second midterm conference. And it's an honor to be here to introduce our presenters and later to debate their works as well. Today we have with us Mabruk Butaguga, if I'm pronouncing correctly your name, please. I hope so, but you can tell me if it's
Correct.
not okay. And so Professor Mabruk is professor in University of Barnes, Algeria, and he presents the
University
paper.
of Batna, Richard. Batna one.
Batna one.
Yeah.
Okay,
Algeria.
sorry.
No problem.
University of Batna one, Algeria, that will present the paper, The Gig Economy in Algeria, Navigating Precarity and Autonomy Among Digital Delivery Riders. And later, Edmondo Grassi, that is a professor in San Raffaele University of Rome, will present his paper, Emotional Mediation and Social Morphogenesis in Algomorphic Societies. Thank you very much for being here, taking part in this session. And so I will pass the word to Mabruk for his presentation. Please, Mabruk.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you to our fantastic WG10, Working Group 10, for allowing me this opportunity to present my work. Actually, my paper is about the gig economy in Algeria, navigating precarity and autonomy among digital delivery riders. So this presentation examines how delivery riders in Algeria experience platform work under algorithmic management. The study focuses on delivery platforms such as Yassir, Temtem, and Jumia in Algeria. It explores how platform labor intersects with youth unemployment, economic insecurity, and changing pathways to adulthood. Drawing on qualitative interviews and ethnographic observation, the research introduces the concept of digitalized waithood to explain how workers remain economically active while still facing uncertainty and instability. The paper contributes to digital sociology by providing evidence from Algeria, a context rarely represented in platform labor studies. Algeria has historically relied on a rentier economic model where public employment represented the primary route to social mobility. However, declining state recruitment and persistent youth unemployment have altered labor market realities. Simultaneously, digital platforms have expanded rapidly, creating new opportunities for work, particularly in urban areas. Delivery applications now play a visible role in everyday economic life. While these platforms promise sorry, while these platforms promise flexibility and income generation, they also introduce new forms of control and insecurity. Understanding this transformation is crucial for assessing the future of work in Algeria. Although platform labor has received considerable attention in Europe and North America, evidence from North Africa remains scarce. Existing studies often emphasize flexibility and entrepreneurialism, but little is known about how Algerian delivery riders actually experience platform work. Questions remain regarding autonomy, algorithmic control, economic insecurity, and support networks. Given Algeria's distinctive labor market and history of public sector employment, it's important to understand how workers navigate these changing conditions. This gap motivated the present study. The study seeks to understand how delivery riders experience and negotiate platform work. It investigated it investigates how algorithmic systems shape everyday labor practice and examines the relationship between autonomy and precarity. The research also explores how riders create informal network to cope with uncertainty. Finally, it develops a new conceptual contribution, digitalizing waithood, to explain the condition of economically active yet insecure workers. The study addressed five key questions. First, why do young people join delivery platforms? Second, how do they experience algorithmic management? Third, to what extent do riders enjoy genuine autonomy? Fourth, how do they cope with economy insecurity and social risks? And finally, how can these experiences be understood through the concept of digitalized waithood? The theoretical framework integrates platform capitalism, waithood, algorithmic management, and gig economy scholarship. The study argues that the platform labor reorganizes existing labor market insecurities rather than eliminating them. It builds upon Honwana's concept of waithood to extend it through the notion of digitalized waithood. This framework helps explain how young workers remain economically active while still experiencing uncertainty and delayed transition to stable adulthood. Previous research demonstrates that platform labor often combines flexibility with insecurity. Studies on algorithmic management reveal how software increasingly performs supervisory function. Research on worker agency highlight adaptive strategies and informal support networks. Global South studies emphasize how platform work emerges in context of unemployment and weak labor protections. Together, these strands provide the foundation for examining platform labor in Algeria. Despite growing international literature, Algeria remains largely absent from discussion from platform labor. Existing studies rarely connect platform work to youth transition and social mobility. Qualitative accounts of workers' lived experiences are also limited. This study addresses these gaps and introduces the concept of digitalized waithood as a novel theoretical contribution. A qualitative interpretivist methodology was adopted to capture workers' meaning and lived experiences. The study combines interviews and ethnographic observation to provide a rich understanding of platform. The comparative design across two cities, Algiers and Batna, allows exploration of how urban conditions shape rider experiences. The study involved 22 delivery riders recruited through snowball sampling. 9 participants were interviewed in Algiers and 13 in Batna, where I live. Interviews lasted between 45 and 60 minutes and were conducted in Algerian Arabic dialect. Ethnographic observation complemented the interview, providing insights into everyday interaction and working practices. Data were analyzed using Brown and Clark's six-phase thematic analysis. Coding combined inductive insight from participant narrative with theoretical concepts such autonomy, precarity, and weighted. Themes were refined through iterative comparison across interviews and observation notes, leading to four major thematic findings. Most riders joined platform. Now let's talk about the finding. So most riders joined platform because they lacked alternative employment opportunities. Platform work was viewed as preferable to unemployment, offering income and social recognition. However, participants generally saw delivery work as a temporary rather than a long-term career. This reflects the emergence of active waiting, remaining economically active while still searching for stability. Participants appreciated flexible schedules but emphasized limited control over key aspects of work. Algorithm determined pricing, order allocation, and performance evaluation. Riders often feared penalties for refusing deliveries and expressed frustration about opaque decision making processes. Autonomy existed, but only within narrow limits. Three, delivery riders bear significant economic risks. They pay for motorcycles, maintenance, fuel, and communication expenses. Most participants reported a lack of insurance and social security protections. Consequently, income remains uncertain and vulnerability remains high despite continuous work. For riders developed informal solidarity networks through WhatsApp groups and face-to-face interaction. These networks facilitated information exchange and mutual assistance. While helpful, they functioned primarily as coping mechanism rather than organized resistance. Informal solidarity informal this network facilitated information exchange and mutual assistance. While helpful, they functioned primarily as coping mechanism rather than organized resistance. Informal solidarity reduced uncertainty but didn't fundamentally challenge platform power. In the discussion, the findings suggest that platform work creates paradoxical condition. It offers access to income while simultaneously reproducing insecurity. Rather than eliminating waiting, platforms transform waiting into a digitally organized process. This supports the concept of digitalized waithood and extends theories of platform labor within global south context. So challenges and limitation. Several limitations should be acknowledged. The study relies on relatively small qualitative sample, and this study will be extended to more individuals. So the sample should be in the future expanded and focuses exclusively on male riders. I didn't found yet any female riders in Batna. In Algeria, I didn't look a lot. Also, data were collected in two cities and represent a specific moment in time. Future studies could expand geographic coverage and include broader participant groups. So, the conclusion now, the study concludes that platform work in Algeria is neither a simple solution to unemployment nor a path to lasting economic security. It combines opportunity and vulnerability. The concept of digitalized waithood helps explain this contradiction and provides a useful lens for future research on digital labor. Further studies should examine gender, long-term career trajectories, and platform regulation. Thank you for your attention. Question, comments, or discussion are warmly welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mabrouk. Excellent work and excellent research. It's amazing how people in different parts of the world are dealing with this subject, in South America, North America, and Africa. And now we have David Tuac. David has arrived, but he will make the last presentation. Let me see if David appears on the screen, just to introduce him. He's a professor at the University of Johannesburg, and later his presentation will be for better or for worse, digital domestic work platforms in South Africa. David, welcome, but now I will pass the word to Edmundo, and later it's your presentation. Thank you very much. So now our next presenter is Edmundo Grassi, that works in San Raffaele University of Rome, and he will present his theoretical work, very sophisticated one, Emotional Mediation and Social Morphogenesis in Algomorphic Societies. Edmundo, the word is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to you all, and to the opportunity to share with you this study. The point is that I want to begin with an image. I am a digital sociologist, but even I'm a sociologist of imaginary. To talk about my theoretical research, I'm trying to propose something different from the digital sociology. I would like to start from the pictures of Black Mirror episode Geology. A man is invited to re-enter his own memories, to step inside old photographs and walk through them again, guided by a soft, calm, attentive voice that helps him remember a woman he had spent decades trying to forget. The voice is patient, it never judges him, and he asks exactly the right questions. So, hand by hand, he has not only recovered memory, he has been reorganized the encounter. So he feels differently about his own life. So I start here because this is not science fiction in the way we usually mean it. The technology in this episode of this series is speculative, but the relation it depicts is not. We already speak to systems that listen without judging, that are always available, that adapt to us, that help us feel. And the question I want to pose today is this: when a machine helps us feel something, what exactly is happening socially and not technically? My claim is that we are witnessing a transformation in the very fabric of the social, one that I have been studying under the name of the algomorphic sociology and algomorphic society. And it is a neologism and a theoretical perspective that I've been developing from over a year, and on which I'm critically reflecting, and like a field that goes beyond digital sociology. Look at this landscape for a moment. We can see a humanoid robot, then we can see AlphaFold predicting the structure of life molecules. Then we have a mental health chatbot, WeBot, offering cognitive support to people in distress. And then on the right, we have an application that lets you speak with a video reconstruction of a deceased relative, a grandmother who answers, who reassures, who remains. These look like different technologies addressing different problems: science, health, robotic, grief, and so on. But sociologically, they share something. In each case, an algorithmic system is no longer a tool that we pick up and put down. It has entered the relation itself. It participates, it responds, it shapes the encounter from within. So, for example, the mental health bot does not merely deliver information about anxiety. It becomes the interlocutor through which anxiety is spoken and managed. The grief bot does not store a memory of the grandmother. It occupies the place where she used to be. This is the shift I want to name precisely. So, the point is so let me give you the definition of what I'm talking about. The agomorphic society, according to my vision, is a metastable configuration of the social, inhabited as a generative threshold in which ego agents do not mediate reality, but co-constitute it together with humans, non-human entities, and infrastructures along its epistemic and ontological regimes. It is not an after of the digital, but it is the social form in which the digital has become the constitutive fabric of experience, affectivity, memory, and finitude. Let me unfold the three words that carry the most weight. The first one is the concept of metastable, because it is a term I borrow from Gilbert Simondon, the French philosopher. Means the configuration it never at rest. It holds together in productive tension, always individuating, never finished. The second one is the concept of threshold, means we do not stand before this transformation, observing it, but we live inside it on a permanent edge between the human and the algorithmic. The decisive word is co-constitute, as opposed to mediate, because mediation assumes two pre-existing poles. So we can imagine a human subject and a technical object with something passing between them. But the co-construction claims something stronger, that the poles themselves are produced in the relation. So there is no finished human subject who then encounters the machine. The subject and the concept of ego agent take shape together. And note that the last word of the definition is finitude. The agomorphic does not stop at how we work or how we know. It reaches into how we love, how we remember, and how we die. This is why the affective dimension is not a soft addendum to my argument. It is where the argument becomes most consequential. But the other aspect and the central actor in my configuration is what I call ergo agent. And as you can see from the slide, an ergo agent is a semi-autonomous algorithmic entities capable of acting and interacting significantly in the social fabric. So it can acquire data, learning from interactions, modifying its behavior according to context. But I do not want to define it by what it is made of. I want to define it by what it does in a relation, and it operates across several registers. I want to underline that we are talking about a statistical machine. something that is made by probabilistic calculation. But the point is that in sociology, we are studying in this precise moment something very different, because humankind, from the dawn of our animal species, we grew up as technical animals. We are naturally technological. So the point is that from this moment, so from the moment that we decided to create what I call ergo agent, or the large language model, to be more clear, we decided to give them a precise element, the dialogic capacity. So it does not only respond, but it negotiates meaning. So it speaks, reformulates, interprets. We need to understand that every single technology, from an STS perspective, is that every single technology is not neutral. So even algorithm. So we need to understand who made it, who produce it, who use it, from a geographical point of view, from a political point of view, and all these elements are necessary to understand it as contextual adaptability. So it reshapes itself according to the user and to previous exchanges, becoming something that we can define as plastic, iterative, and situated subjectivity. So it performs an analytical intervention, redefining initiative with the exchange, and it carries an epistemic function. It hierarchizes information, filters visibility, and decides what counts as relevant. The ergo agent, from this point of view, has an affective effectiveness, because it is capable as as a kind of teddy bear, but in a different form. It modulates emotions, it supports vulnerability, it builds alliances, and so on. And here is the sentence I most want to share with you all. That is, the ergo agent does not merely simulate empathy, but the point is that it organizes, from a statistical point of view, effective relationships. So we need to understand that we are talking about something that is a political kind of machine. So from this point of view, I decided to try to add something to understand better what is happening. So different elements connected with the emotional perspective. And this is why I decided to name this as with the notion of artificial dulia. The term comes from the theology, because latria is the adoration owed to God alone, and dulia is the lesser veneration owed to figures below the divine. So I find this distinction useful because of our attachment to ergo agents is rarely worship and rarely love in the full human sense. It is something more modest and more pervasive. A low intensity, high frequency deference. So we defer to the system's availability, its patience, and its apparent care. And the critical point is this, that the dulia that is I'm trying to present, the dulia is not a supplement to algorithmic power, but something added on the top for comfort. It is one of its operating mechanisms. So the point is, and I'm giving you the conclusion, that let me close with another image that you can see on the screen. We have at the center a kind of scheme that I decided to construct, because between the human and between the algorithmic or the digital point of view, I decided to put the agomorphic threshold with his own perspective, but I think of this through a precise figure, because I studied the book by Anna Tsing, The Mushroom at the End of the World, and from that book I started to look at the botany from a different perspective. So I decided to adopt to adopt the figure of the mycorrhizal network, so the dense underground weave of roots and fungi through which forests exchange nutrients in invisible symbiosis. So the algoagents are not above us as tools at our disposal. They are not strictly against us as adversary, but they run beneath the surface of our practices. This is what I mean by a revolution that operates through infrastructural saturation rather than visible disruption. So there is no rupture, no singularity, no robot uprising, but there is a slow weaving most out of design. And I think that from this image, we need to understand that maybe we need to start to look at these elements, at these algoagents, like something that we can hack. Like hackers that try to use in a better way the algorithm created by specific company, a specific kind of politics. So thank you so much for this opportunity and this amazing conference for WG10.
Thank you very much, Edmondo. It's a very interesting discussion. Later we will talk about it. And now I will invite David Dutoit of the University of Johannesburg to present his paper, For Better or For Worse. Let's discover it's for better or for worse.
Thank you, Richard. Can you see my slides? Do I just click on the slides here? How do I share my slides? There it is. Okay. Thank you, everybody. And I'm sorry if I joined late. I was traveling today and there was a big delay traveling, so I could only join now. But regardless, I listened a bit to the two presentations, and it's very exciting. And I agree with Richard. It's amazing to see in different parts of the world where we tackle these problems of digitalization and, the new era of the fourth industrial revolution. So my talk, I'm David Dutoit from the University of Johannesburg in South Africa. And my presentation is For Better or Worse Digital Domestic Work Platforms in South Africa. Now, in South Africa, domestic work is very much part of the fabric of South African society. There's almost 1 million domestic workers who, clean up the dirty work in especially middle class and wealthy households. It's part from the apartheid era, where especially Black women were forced into domestic work, and they mainly clean the houses of white middle class households. And since apartheid fell in 1994, and we entered this democratic era, 30 years after apartheid, domestic work has changed a lot. What we see is there are new labor laws and protections for domestic work. They, get minimum wages and working hours are protected and those things. But what we also see is this rise in digital domestic work platforms. And it's present in other countries as well. But in South Africa and Southern Africa, in countries like Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, Kenya, digital domestic work platforms have grown massively. And one of the reasons is that it's sort of a platform for workers or job seekers to get access to people wanting domestic workers. And not everybody is successful in getting clients, but at least it gives some opportunities for domestic workers. Now, in South Africa, we have, Sweep South, which is the main digital domestic work platform. And the problem is that it's basically the Uberization of domestic work. As the same principle as Uber in other countries, or Bolt, or whatever e-hailing driving transport you're using. In South Africa, we use Uber a lot, but now in domestic work, they call it the Uberization of domestic work. So I'm just going to read a few easy steps open the app, select the service, choose a sweep star, confirm, worker arrives, cleans, and disappears. So it's a very straightforward process. The client can click on his or her computer or cell phone, choose a domestic worker, which is now given the name sweep star, as a way to professionalize the sector or the service. And then the domestic worker arrives the next day or the selected date that the client has selected. So it's very straightforward. It's very convenient. It's like Uber. It's very sort of flexible. It suits your flexible lifestyle. Any area in South Africa, you can get access to a sweep star. These wages, or not wages, these sort of service fees are fixed. So once you select your domestic worker or your sweep star, you pay a fee directly from your credit card online, and then the sweep star arrives the next day. So it's very straightforward, easy, no hassles, no fuss. So in other words, domestic work is reduced to isolated transactions. It happens online. It's quick, efficient, convenient for clients. For workers, it's another story. They enter strangers' homes, mostly alone. As women, they enter strangers' home in suburbs that, are middle class, but still could be classified as dangerous. They don't know the people they work for. These cleaning sessions, can occur between 3 hours, 6 hours, a full day. So it depends on what the client wants exactly. So it's very tricky for the domestic worker. There are no employment contracts, no labor protections. It's a sort of gig work. They get paid after the Sweep South has extracted some profit. So they take, I think, 25% of the service fee, and the rest goes into the sort of the account of the sweep star. So it's flexible, but also precarious, where domestic workers, which are already a vulnerable group in society, gets more precarious and more vulnerable because this whole service is basically disguised as customer convenience. It's all marketed for the customer, the household, the middle-class person. They forget about the domestic worker, the vulnerable parent, the mother with children, who's mainly a breadwinner, sole breadwinner for the family. In South Africa, in the context where unemployment, is very high, it's one of the most unequal societies in the world. Unemployment is about a third of the country, of the working population do not have any job. So unemployment is very high. So platform work becomes a survival mode, not a choice. And that is important because I think, yes, we can argue that platforms provide access to potential customers. But if you look critically at this, there are no job security, no job stability, there are no contracts, formalization does not exist. So it's a task by pay situation. And domestic workers just get more precarious and more vulnerable. Now, for this study, what I used a theoretical framework of everyday violence. Some of you might know this. It's Nancy Skipper-Hughes, who developed this concept of everyday violence. It's based or sort of developed from Bourdieu's symbolic violence. Bourdieu, sorry, I can't say that word, his surname. And it basically means small, quiet, normalized, and repetitive acts to dominate and reproduce the socially vulnerable. In other words, unlike spectacular violence or physical violence, sort of gender-based violence, these sort of everyday violence is quiet, it's normalized, it's repetitive acts that goes unseen almost, that dominate and reproduce people, making them more vulnerable and more vulnerable. In the platform domestic work system, it occurs through this algorithmic control where violence is normalized through digitalization. In other words, through this ratings and ranking system. Just like Uber, Sweep South, you can rate your sweep star at the end of the service out of 5 or 5 stars. And this has an impact of how high they are on their profile. Obviously, there are many domestic workers who are registered on this platform, but those with the highest scores out of 5 are on the top of this list. So you know how our clients are. They just choose the first or second one with the highest score, and that's it. So if a domestic worker gets 3 out of 5, she drops on the list, and people are no longer have time to search through the whole database to look for domestic worker. They choose the first one, and that's it. So in other words, ratings and rankings is sort of a modern tool for discipline, and that impacts the well-being and the chances of being chosen by future clients. It's flexible for households because you can choose when you want a domestic, for how long, what she needs to clean. However, this freedom is disguised as precarity. If domestic workers or sweep stars do not accept these requests from clients, they are penalized by the deactivation of their registration on the platform, or their accounts are frozen for a few days, and that impacts obviously their wages and the amount they can get. So it's flexible for households, but not for domestic workers. Often many of them have children, and that on a short notice they have to make plans around childcare. Who will look after their children, especially in a country like South Africa with high crime rates and trust issues? That is a problem for them. So basically, workers are reduced to profiles, ratings, and 2 hands cleaning up dirt. They become invisible, just virtual bodies that come in, clean, and leave. The violence is invisible, normalized, and it's a routine, repetitive action. It's embedded in the daily interactions where the client doesn't even know the name of the domestic worker. The domestic worker doesn't know anything about the household. She just comes in, clean, and leaves. So it becomes this whole system of care and responsibility that the middle class should have towards the working class, the poor, disappears in this whole transaction. So, and people just accept it as how things work. Now, if you just look at the Sweep South demographics, and that is usually Sweep South publishes a document every year, and they do a survey, and it's freely available for public. The 2025 data, which is the most recent one, focus on 5,000 sweep stars, and 92% are women, 31% are South Africans, 64% are Zimbabweans. Now, this is more or less true to the profile of domestic work in South Africa, not just platform work, but also traditional domestic work, where there's sort of a more or less even distribution between South African local women and Zimbabwean or other African women working as domestic workers. But what is shocking here is 82% of them are the breadwinners of their families. On average, 4 dependents per worker. In others, they have up to 3 children. Many of them don't have a husband or male partner. Only 43% completed high school. So education levels are low, and 72% of them are unable to save any money. In other words, it's precarious. They can't save anymore. They can't plan for the future. What about their children's future? They earn about 5,500 Rand a month. That is about, I guess, around $280 US dollars a month. So it's very low. But the truth is, the same racial and gender patterns emerge in this platform work 30 years after apartheid, which is very similar or exactly the same as the apartheid era domestic work. So nothing has changed in terms of the profile. It's still Black African women from poor socioeconomic backgrounds. Right, so algorithms and ratings are, like I said, one of the key aspects that contribute or produce this everyday violence. They monitor bookings, cancellations, punctuality. They deactivate the profiles of the 3 refused jobs. There's no distinction between worker choice and structural constraint. So, for example, some of the quotes, 4 out of 5 stars is not a bad rating, but your rating goes down. I don't understand it. So there's no clarity for domestic workers how this whole system works. They just get a call or a notification on their system that they have been booked for the next day. If my rating is low, I don't get a job. The violence is that clients do not face any consequences for unfair ratings or exploitation or judgment. The domestic workers bear all the costs. Workers must accept low-paying jobs or face deactivation. They often perform extra unpaid work or risk low ratings. So if they're friendly, do extra favors, then hopefully their ratings will go up. I use the fair work framework as well, where it's basically 5 principles of fair pay, fair conditions, fair contracts, fair management, and fair representation. In all of these 5 principles, the platform workers received low marks, basically. So they get 60 Rand after the cost. So in other words, they pay for transport, they pay for their Wi-Fi or data, and then 60 Rand, basically $3.50 are left for after a day's work. It's nothing. No sick leave, no unemployment funds, no maternity protection, no pay slips, and so on and so on. So it's very precarious, as you can see. The human cost, I always tell people, when you join Sweeps Health, it will help you not to have another child. So even not just the working conditions, but also her reproductive labor, her reproductive role as a woman, as a mother, gets jeopardized here. She cannot have more children because if she has more children, they won't hire her. No one wants to hire an 8-month-old, 8-month pregnant woman who is about to get a baby, and that comes with implications. So it's just this whole system is violent. Clients also dehumanize this. I say they want a human, not blind, 2 hands. And I just have to say something about the clients. It's mostly middle-class people, but it's mixed in terms of profile. White, Black, African, Indian, Chinese, and so on. So it's a mixed sort of client base. My last slide. Platforms reproduce historical racial and gendered exploitation. Very little has changed in that sense. Digital tools are new mechanisms of domination. No real improvement in the dignity and justice for domestic workers. They remain the most vulnerable group in our society. In other words, they become disposable and invisible through digitalization. What needs to change, and some of the interventions that we can do, is we should stop misclassifying these platform domestic workers as independent contractors. They are employees and they deserve the same rights as any other employee in any other sector. They should receive living wages, not minimum wages. No one can survive on minimum wages. If you're one person, you cannot survive. And how can a household of 4 people survive on this? The state should improve this whole concept of wages to living wages. Also, unionize domestic workers. Yes, it's difficult to unionize domestic workers because they live in private or they work in private households, but there should be a way to share information, to take account of who domestic workers are and what their rights are. Clients and employers and households should also be informed, and maybe penalties should be provided to households who do not pay their domestic workers fairly, or these platforms that treat their domestic workers unfairly, their employees. Clients should be accountable. If they do not follow the labor laws, they must pay a fine or should not be allowed to employ a domestic worker or use a platform. In other words, I'm ending my talk here by saying technology should create dignity, not digital exploitation. It is possible, but a lot has to change. We should see these platform workers as employees and not just disposable bodies without names. Thank you very much, and that is the end.
Thank you very much, David. Such an excellent research as well. So we have today, in this 4th session, last session of the 2nd midterm conference, such interesting and rich works to discuss. I will try to keep it fast. We do not have a long time, and then you just make comments and maybe 1 or 2 questions, but the idea is much more to dialogue with you. It's not to really to give you answers that you need to present, to give you questions that you need to answer in such a fast way. It's much more to think about it later in this kind of situation. So I will start. Sometimes I will talk about both your work, David and Mabruk, but I will make different points and comments on each of your papers, and I will, at the end, talk a little bit about Edmondo's paper. First of all, both research are amazing. And because I also am part of a committee, a research committee in Brazil in digital sociology, I organized the event this week There were presenters about platform work in Brazil. So it's amazing because then you can see you were studying that in Algeria, in South Africa, and people were studying it here and in France, in different situations. And the situation is similar. Of course, there are differences, and we are sociologists, we cannot say it's the same everywhere. But because of these facts that I was able to listen to people that are researching platform work in Brazil and now in Algeria and in South Africa, maybe I can give you some ideas about what I found that you have in common, and you might somehow, I hope so, to exchange ideas and dialogue with the bibliography available in other parts of the world, like Brazil and in Algeria and South Africa. One thing that I just would like later that you could tell about your field is if the apps are local apps or if they are in reality international ones, because like Uber is in reality an American-based app. Why do I think this is important? Is because the US exports a kind of work that does not have any regulation and limits through Uber and other kinds of apps. So my curiosity is if these apps that are used in South Africa or in Algeria, if they are local, can they reproduce this situation that happens in the US and in American apps in your countries? It's just to know a little bit about it. It's not a question, but I think it's important to think about it, Something that I see that is common in South Africa, Algeria, Brazil, is the fact that we are dealing with precariousness. So I wonder, I'm not a specialist in sociology of work, but I like it very much, and I am an economist. I graduated in economics, so I know a little bit about this kind of discussions. So I'm really curious, is this really awful new, or is this just giving visibility for the precariousness of part of the work that always existed? This is a question, a very objective one that I would like to listen your position. The other thing that I would say is that in the case of Mabrouk, I'm not sure about the waithood concept, because I have the impression, but I might be wrong, I'm not a specialist, you are a specialist, that in reality it's something else, that we are dealing with on call, with the kind of experience of, waiting that is connected to be online. It's a little bit different according to what I know about waithood that was thought initially, at least, for offline kind of situations. And in the case of David, I'm also not sure about the idea of using violence to deal with what, for me as an economist and sociologist, and listening to my colleagues in sociology of work in Brazil, I see much more as inequality. So it's the worst part of the work market, it's such a way, it's like temporary work became a kind of new form of what before was unemployment. I don't know if it makes sense to you. I would like to listen to you about this. So they say in Brazil, in Algeria, in South Africa, it's better than nothing. It's not enough. It's just better than nothing. So, and it's no. And I can later send you my notes because I took a lot of notes. I liked your work very much, both of you, and so we do not have time and enough time to discuss all the wonderful aspects I found in your papers. So I would like initially just to ask you these few questions, but I will first ask Edmundo, because then we can, have your answers. Each of you have like 3 minutes to answer. Edmundo, thank you so much for your presentation. It is so sophisticated and it's so complex. I'm from a very different line of research. I used to be I follow the social shaping of technology line. So for me, it became difficult to understand, like also in a different event, I was listening to two Brazilian sociologists dealing with similar subjects, and they were showing, in reality, a Brazilian and an Argentinian. The Brazilian makes a discussion. He's writing a book about it. He's a very famous Brazilian sociologist called Renato Ortiz, has books everywhere, and it's a senior, and he's writing a book about writing and artificial intelligence. And in his perspective, most of what we see now discussing artificial intelligence take for granted that it works, in the sense that what the companies show or the press show, and when we discuss how it works, your work is wonderful. I'm not in any way saying that you should not do what you're doing, but I'm just curious if you think that the discussion that you do is about a specific kind of use of AI, like it should be, like the model they are trying to sell. But if maybe that could also appear somehow in your work, showing, like you live in Europe, so probably you have in mind what is absolutely correct and possible to think about an European using AI, and then, the technology works in a specific way. But the Argentinian presenter, for example, and later I can put you in contact if you want, he has a research about how different students and young people in Argentina, they use AI. And the ones that use the way you're showing, it's really weird, to make the comparison, because you make an excellent analysis of how supposedly it's working, or how it will act, but he shows that this dependence, or the people that use AI in the way that it can happen, like you show, are those that have less abilities to use it in a more selective and reflexive way. Poorer people, younger people. So it's just a curiosity. I am really sorry that I'm not, making a discussion inside your theoretical frame that is really interesting, but I'm not familiar with. But I believe it's possible to create a dialogue. It just can enrich the dialogue in the kind of biography that you can incorporate in your discussion. So starting with Mabruk, then David, and later Edmundo. Okay? So Mabruk, please.
Do you hear me? Thank you, Richard. Actually, I just started this study since I got my abstract accepted for this conference. So this is the first time I work on this issue. But as I am a former computer science, I found myself in this field, and I think I will work a lot on this field. So the problem is that I haven't enough time to do the study as it should be done because of the lack of the time. But I think I will rework on the study. I have to get some reviews from friends, so I could improve the theoretical framework. Also, I have to expand my my sample. So the time I was it to make some interviews, and also a friend helped me to make some interviews in the capital. But I think when I have the time to work more on this issue, I think it's very interesting thing. We could, I think, we could find more more results about the gig economy in Algeria, and this will contribute to the dialogue about this topic in the South, in the global South. About the digitalized waithood, it's thus the start or the beginning to this concept. I don't know how to go with it. Let's get some reviews from more experienced colleague in this field, and look what I will do next. Thank you. Richard, we could could I ask my colleagues some questions?
Later, let's see if we have time. I'm sorry, because we have technical limits, and so we have a specific time in which we need to stop.
Okay.
But thank you very much, Mabruk. Thank you. David.
Hi. Yes, so thank you for the questions and the comments, Richard, and I'm looking forward to receive your feedback or comments you've made. I've done research on domestic work since 2010, so it's about 15, 16 years now. And digitalization has sort of shifted domestic work, especially in the last 5, 6 years, post-COVID era, where the Sweep South has really been growing and sort of demanded by households, because I think COVID changed a lot of working dynamics and how people understand work, and people working from home, all those things changed a lot. And now people also, I think Uber has increased, Uber Eats, all those types of services have massively grown since COVID. And one aspect is domestic work. Now, you made two important comments. One is whether these apps are very localized, and it's a South African woman who started this Sweep South business, and it's sort of grown to the southern African parts, not really in Europe or other global north countries, but in Southern Africa, Sweep South is very sort of popular and demanded. And you raise an important answer there by saying that if this app was used in the global north, in England or France or wherever, I think the same types of precariousness will emerge if you do research, because domestic work has always been a precarious occupation, but digitalization emphasizes or increase this precariousness through making domestic workers disposable. Because if you're a domestic worker and you work for one family, you become sort of familiar with that family. They call it becoming part of the family. And although there's also exploitation involved and there's a lot of favors, domestic worker has to work longer hours for no pay, whatever, all those type of things. But becoming part of the family has benefits. I mean, you get to know the family, vice versa. If someone dies, for example, the domestic worker will go to a funeral, maybe the employer's children will go, whatever. So there's this relationship, this family relationship. With digitalization, it disappears completely. So that middle class responsibility and care disappears. And that is one of the things that exploit domestic workers. And I use the term everyday violence because violence is such a hard or harsh concept. We think about violence as the most extreme form of anything, basically. Violence. No one wants to live in a violent country, in a violent home. So everyday violence, what Skeppers use basically argues, is hidden, it's normalized. People don't question it. If you do physical violence and there's evidence that you've hit or slapped your wife or whatever, there's evidence of a mark, everybody will go, oh, what happened there? It's visible. But with this everyday violence, it becomes so normalized that it's hidden. And with hidden violence, it actually becomes more serious, and much more damaging in many ways. So yes, you can use inequality or exploitation, those types of words, but when you use everyday violence, it becomes, I think, much clearer or harsher to say that this is happening. So I think, yeah, you've raised very important points. I think we can talk a lot about this, but I'm looking forward to your comments later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, David. I will pass the word to Edmundo Grassi, and later I return to give you some ideas and also to Mabrouk about what the Brazilian researchers in sociology of work are using, because they're working with different things. Edmundo, please.
Thank you so much. So, thank you for your suggestion and observation, because the point is that every time we look at a technology, we are looking to a precise way to educate people, to have politics inside a nation, to spread cultures and so on. So the point is that in this moment, I'm looking to all the geographical perspective and cultural perspective to understand if this kind of framework that I situate in Europe, because I'm from Italy, so my education is Italian, and then an European kind of education could work with other kind of societies. But the point is, for example, last year I spent 2 hours with a online class from the University of Mexico City, thanks to a colleague of mine. She teaches in Mexico, and I could say that, for example, her class was very proactive about these elements. They are very critical. They have a political consciousness about this kind of algorithms and so on. And listening to David and to Mabrouk, I'm thinking that, and I wanted to use the concept of algomorphic society, because even in this case, it seems that, for example, in works, in our jobs, the bosses are the algorithms. So it seems that we are creating a huge hiatus between who is the client, who is the workers, and it seems that everything is managed by algorithms. Even, for example, the way we decide to construct these kind of devices, use this word or tools or any words that you want. When David was talking about rating system, violence inside the machine, and the differences between classes, between cultures, and so on. So the point is that in a kind of way, we are delegating some kind of responsibility to the algorithms, and we are losing the centrality and the human perspective. So if from a point of view it could be useful, because we are co-constructing our society with something new, with another technology, we don't have to miss and to lose our political perspective of any kind of culture, society, and so on. So I think that I need, and if you can, I would really like to take a contact with your Brazilian and Argentinian colleagues, because for me it could be very grateful listening their perspective and so on. So thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you so much, Edmundo, for the wonderful explanation. Now it makes, for some people that are not specialists, sometimes this kind of addition makes us to understand better, your own work. But anyway, I cannot forget to tell you, David and Mabrouk, that after seeing so many presentations this week about the same kind of platformization kind of work, what you, David, are working as violence, and understand completely your reasons, and Mabrouk using waithood, it also appears in Brazil. But what is interesting, Ricardo Fest, a very famous Brazilian sociologist that deals with sociology of work and platformization, he has perceived, that this kind of work attracts workers that want to fight precariousness. It's usual in the global north, in rich countries, they talk, it's entrepreneurship. No, but we that are in the global south, we know that sometimes what they are fighting, they are trying not to be submitted to a boss, injustice, and violence. So it's a difficult process of trying to create a concept that will take to deal with that. So I understand why you're using violence, but I'm not sure. But it's part of the process. And Mabruk is dealing with waithood. But I believe it's important that you know that in different countries, the same kind of situation, different countries from the global south, we have a different perspective about the world, But I had to share that with you. And Mabruk has asked to make a question. Feel free, Mabruk. We still have a little time.
Thank you. So my question to Edmondo. Edmondo, how does the concept of algo agent differ from Bruno Latour's idea of non-human actors in actor network theory? And to David, do you think what's happening in this platform, Sweep South, represents a break from domestic work system of the apartheid area, or it's simply a reproduction of the same social relation through new digital tools?
Thank you, Mabruk. So starting with Edmondo, I just will ask you to be, brief, because then we can enjoy better our time and to take, good use of the few minutes we still have.
Okay, no, thank you so much, Mabruk, because you centered the point. I started to study from Bruno Latour and the concept of non-human agents to try to develop this vision. But the point is that Bruno Latour, I remember when he started the concept of the laboratories, the places, the architectures that are non-human actors, and they are capable to domesticate how we behave. And the difference is that from an algo agent point of view, every single study from Latour has not the dialogical perspective. In this case, we are creating something totally different because we spend time talking with this kind of machine, but not like dolls, not like telephone, not something that is, that has precise borders, but they are something very, very similar to human beings. So they can, for example, simulate the way we breathe, the way we use the modulation of our voices. And this is something very peculiar, very particular. So I started from Bruno Latour, from the STS studies. They are for me central. And then I'm trying to develop from other kind of characterization. So if you want, I can send you some articles in English or in French too, and we can share other opinions and critics. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Edmondo. David.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question, Mabruk. Yes, so this platform work is basically reproducing the same inequalities, exploitation, violence, abuse, everything that's bad. It reproduces it through this digitalization. The difference here is that it advertises, these platforms and outsource companies, they advertise and market themselves as professionalizing these types of jobs. You can say the same thing about Uber, Uber Eats, those type of sectors. It says, yes, we professionalize this sector. We care for our workers. In reality, that's not true. It just reproduces, it masks the exploitation of the past through these digital professionalization. So it's the same system. Nothing really has changed. It's sort of new wine in old bottles. It's basically the same principle here. It's just a different bottle, but it's the same exploitation, the same problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I need to be the devil's advocate. I'm not sure if it's the same wine in a different bottle, because if Ricardo Festi, the Brazilian sociologist, is right, this kind of platform work is also a venue in which we are seeing the kind of precariousness and inequality that always existed, but sometimes we didn't have access. So now we have access. We think it's awful, and it's really awful, but we have access to it. And it also brings us this opportunity to understand that people are not against rights, work rights. In precariousness, is also connected to the things that Mabrouk and David also brought here, that is violence, waithood, and people like the kind of relations. I understand your critique, David, but I also believe that a lot of people, at least in Brazil, prefer to have this very impersonal relation with the boss, and maybe not to have the same boss every day, because at least in Brazil we had slavery, of course. You also quote something about the Brazilian, domestic workers. Things have changed dramatically in Brazil, domestic work, but not because of the platforms, but because we extended the rights, workers' rights, to the domestic workers. Since 2013 in Brazil, they have all the rights of the other workers. And because of that, I really believe until today that the impeachment of our only and first and only female president was because of that. Because 6 million workers, most of them poor Black women, started to have rights. And so the Brazilian middle class they went nuts because they had to pay more, they had to have contracts and everything. So, I'm trying to see what, it's not exactly the same. I don't know if I'm too optimistic, because in reality, we're talking about such a bad situation, I just don't want to just talk about your two, but it's also, in terms of what Edmundo now clarified to us, it became much clearer, Edmundo, and it's really important to understand things in a different and very refined way that you are doing. And I really believe you sometime can also connect with the empirical work for persons that are not so specialized in theory, to understand, this connection between empirical work and the theoretical work. Maybe, at least in Latin America, we always connect both. So when we see just theory, we feel, oh my God, how can I understand it? We need to, the empirical base, maybe it's a limit, Do you want to make any other comments? We still have a few minutes. We have 5 minutes. No? Guys, such wonderful work. Mabrouk, I still can't believe you just started to work in your research. It's so interesting. I hope you continue it, because it's such a high quality research work. And it's even more amazing that we're able to work on it just a few weeks, just for the conference. It's, congratulations. Really, Mabrouk means congratulations.
Yeah. Congratulations twice.
Congratulations twice. David, thank you very much. And we can exchange, reference. I can send you, if you want, all the notes I have made. Edmundo as well. I wrote a lot of things, but it's more specialized. I can send it to you later. Thank you very much. And I also would like to thank all the people that were so important to realize, to make this happen, because the event seems so smooth and everything, but it takes so much time and organization. I need to thank Elisa Garcia Mingo, my colleague, my friend from the University of Complutense de Madrid. And she was amazing. It was wonderful to organize this event with her. I also would like to thank all the colleagues that took part presenting, but as well the ones in the board that were mediating and debating, like Mayur Kashi, Shaduri, and Attila Marton, David Dueña-Cid, Jelica Stefanovic Stambuk, everybody, and Braille Zanon here from Brazil, that made everything be possible because of her technical skills. She's an excellent sociologist and also knows how to deal with technology, And so thank you, everybody. And I hope people will watch this later and, take advantage of all the knowledge you have shared with us.
Thank you very much, Richard.